Hey, what's going on, everyone? Axel here. So, today I want to talk about a question I see a lot of people ask about pretty frequently in the community, and even commenting on my YouTube videos. Something that people ask about all the time is they want to know, how is DDO doing in terms of population? How alive is the game still? So, the past week or so, I've been trying to look and find every bit of data of really the best data I can on DDO's population and see if I can come to some kind of conclusion. So I'm going to talk about what I've kind of the things I've come to, and unfortunately, what I kind of found is that there's not a whole lot of data out there. Uh, SSG, Standing Stone Games, who runs DDO, they are a private company, and we don't have access to any of that information. Like they don't share it for obvious reasons. They don't share that information on exact population numbers and trends and things. Especially with a game like DDO that obviously isn't going to be like getting huge population boosts or anything. But I wanted to kind of look at the game and from what I could find and see if I could come to any kind of conclusion. So basically, there are two sources of information that I was able to find. There's a website called DDOOracle.com, which tracks logins into the game, total logins per week. However, the website stopped functioning around July 2015, so we don't have any data from the past 3 years. So that's unfortunate. So we can only, I think we can get a pretty good guess of how many players there were back then, when the website was still functioning and still updating. I'm not sure why the website isn't functioning anymore, but it's not. But I was hoping that I could look at the second source of information, the Steam charts. So for those of y'all who don't know, the Steam charts is a way to look at the population of concurrent players on Steam games, and DDO is on Steam. Now, the big problem, of course, with this is that the Steam charts only track what can players that are playing through Steam. So the vast majority of DDO players, in my opinion, are not going to be playing on Steam, basically because there's no reason to play through Steam, really. I mean, there's a few perks, like it tracks your hours played and things like that. Maybe if you're a big PC gamer, you might want to play through Steam just so it's right there with your other games. But really, there's no reason to go through an extra step to play DDO. You can download it right off their website, put it on your desktop. There's no reason to do that. So the data from the Steam charts is only going to reflect players playing through Steam. So that's unfortunate. It's not going to give us an idea of how many players are actually playing the game. But I think we can come to some conclusions. What I was hoping to do is look at the data from DDO Oracle from say like 2015 through 2012 and line that up with the Steam data, because Steam data I think started around 2012 or so. DDO went onto Steam, so I was hoping that I could compare the data from 2012 through 2015 from both of these sources and see if I could identify any trends or any way, really any trends I could, to see if I could extrapolate out the data from DDO Oracle onto Steam charts, and hopefully I could use the Steam chart data from the past, recently from 15 to 18, to kind of extrapolate the number of logins, at least come to a good estimate of how many logins we might be seeing, so I could estimate the player base. Unfortunately, I couldn't really do that, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. But I think there are some things we can see from just looking at the Steam charts. So as you can see on the screen right here, the Steam charts number has been really stable over the past couple years, which is good. So that shows you that while this may be a really small sample of the population, it does give you some evidence that DDO's player base probably is not dropping off too hard. It's probably staying pretty stable, and DDO does seem to be keeping their long-term players. Now you can see kind of a dip here at the very beginning of the chart. That was around 2012. So that's when Menace of the Underdark came out. It came out, I believe, mid 2012. So you start to see drop-offs kind of later in 2012, and that's kind of obvious. I mean, Motu, for those of you who don't know, was DDO's biggest effort ever. They hired a lot of extra people. It was a really big deal, and it was DDO's biggest expansion, I would say, to date for sure, just in terms of effort and what went into it and how much product they gave us. So it's not too it's not surprising to see a drop off after that, and people came back to play Motu and it dropped off after that because they played it and then they were done with it and they left. So that's not it's not too crazy to see that, but we are seeing kind of consistent population, so I think that's good. There is one other thing to consider. DDO has kind of a niche. MMOs are not a big thing anymore. 10, 15, 20 years ago, when WoW, 10, really it's 10, 15 years ago when WoW was the big thing, that's kind of what everyone wanted to emulate is World of Warcraft. And DDO is one of those MMOs that came out after WoW. But in any case, MMOs are not a big thing anymore. That's not the trend in the gaming industry. So I don't think DDO is going to get any kind of competition, major competition. It still has this niche because there's a lot of Dungeons and Dragons players who want to play in kind of a regular online game. And there's really no other options. There's a few others, but DDO does have its niches as really in-depth MMO that a lot of people are into. So I don't see a lot of competition coming anytime soon to steal that away. So that's good. It's not like DDO's in some kind of really hot genre like first-person shooter or something where you can lose your entire, all of your population in a year because there's so much competition that can steal it away. So DDO doesn't have to worry about that, so that's good. Okay, so the next question is, how many players does DDO have? And that's the one thing I want to get into next that I said I would get into. Okay, so as I kind of said already, so the Steam charts show concurrent players just playing through Steam. The DDO Oracle data shows the total logins per week, except it only shows it up to July 15th, 2015. So what I did is, as you can see on the screen here, I took a bunch of time and I plotted the Oracle data in a spreadsheet for the same time period as the Steam chart data and looked for trends. Sadly, I could not find any. Unfortunately, like I just explained, I could not find any trends. There were a lot of variances in the data, and I'm not really sure what's going on. As you can see here, if you compare the two line graphs for the same period, you should see a similar trend, even though these are different kinds of data. Like these are concurrent players versus total logins. You should see somewhat of a similar curve because these are still two population tracking data points. So you should still see some kind of somewhat of a similar curve. But as you can see here, the DDO Oracle data is trending downwards more than the Steam charts. And because of that, I couldn't really compare the data. What I wanted to do, like I explained before, is take the data for each of the every 4 weeks, because Steam charts break it down per month, concurrent users per month. I wanted to compare that and then extrapolate it out, but I couldn't do that because the data just was not lining up. There were no trends that I could estimate off of. Why is it different? I'm not sure. There's a couple reasons why we're seeing different trends from the two charts. So Steam charts staying stable, whereas DDO Oracles is going down, even when you compare with the same time period. One possibility is the Steam sample size may just be too small. I wouldn't be too surprised to see that. I think most players, the vast overwhelming majority of players, are probably playing through DDO. There's also differences. So, like for example, the population on Steam is probably younger than the population from desktop downloads, I would say. So that could have a factor. They could have different habits. There's also a possibility that one or the other or both of these data sets, Oracle or Steam charts, could just be inaccurate. Also, like I kind of explained before, it's very possible that the Steam population is not representative of the overall population of DDO, because, for example, like for things I've just said, like age, probably the DDO, all the long-term DDO players are probably not running through Steam just because they played the game forever. They would have played the game way before Steam, so they probably wouldn't have switched over because there's no reason to run it through Steam unless you want a few other things, like I think it tracks your hours, like I've explained before. But for that reason, I think there's probably a lot more of your hardcore players playing from their desktop, as opposed to probably Steam is a lot more casual players. So there's some differences there. Parts of the data did line up, like at the beginning there, where you can see the drop off from Motu. But again, I don't know if that it being DDO being new on Steam didn't have something to do with that large rise at the beginning of its data as well. Because when it would have gone out on Steam initially, I would have assumed it would be advertised. Being on Steam would be advertised to a whole new audience, so there would be a lot of people who jumped in to DDO right when it got on Steam because they only play games through Steam and probably never heard of DDO before. But I do think we can come to some conclusions. If you look at the old Oracle data and you sum it for all servers for the last, the later portions of the data, so say early, middle 2015, you can see that we had something like 400,000 to 500,000 logins per week during that time period. So if you ballpark and say on average people logged in 7 times per week, you can divide those numbers 400,000 and 500,000 by 7 and get a total of 57,000 to around 57,000 to 71,000 players. Now you might ask, why did I use 7? It's an estimate, so I have to estimate how many players will be logging in each week, and you have to be aware that the Oracle chart, it tracks based on logins, but that does not necessarily mean each time played. So for example, it doesn't mean it represents one session. So for example, if you in the past with DDO, there's been a lot of lag problems, a lot of people getting booted off of the server just for lag and things. You hit a loading screen and the game freezes. That would be a relog, so that would also count again. And that was pretty frequent when I was playing a lot during that time. That would happen to me, I would say, fairly often during my DDO sessions. So I think that it's pretty fair to say 7 times per week is a pretty good estimate, even though I think that that's probably high because most players are, I would say a lot of players are everyday players, but most people probably aren't logging in every day during the week. And of course there is some that log in just maybe once a week, but there's others that also are going to be logging in maybe in the morning and in the evening, so maybe 14 times per week plus whatever they're having to relog for server disconnect. So but I think overall 7 is a decent estimate. I mean, you could argue maybe say 5 or 8 or something, but I think 7 is a pretty good guess. So anyways, so at that time, we can tell based on the Oracle data, if we use 7 times per week as the average login per week per player, that we did have from around 57,000 to 71,000 active players. So obviously that's not the population we have now, because that was 2015. We're sitting here in early 2019 now. So that would be 3 years later, 3.5 years later. So it's going to have dropped off some. So how much has it dropped off? I don't know. If you throw out a figure and say, hey, maybe the population is halved. If you say the population is halved, then that means we're right now, instead of being at 57 to 71,000 players, we're at 29,000 to 35,000 players. I think if you look at the Steam data and the concurrent players, it seems to be more stable than that. Like I think that we've certainly lost players, obviously, since 2015. I don't know if we've halved though. I think that might be a little too much. So I think if I had to estimate my bottom line estimation, just looking at how stable the Steam population is the past few years, I'm going to say that we've maybe lost 30% of the population since 2015, maybe 40%. But I'm going to throw out a number. I'm going to say right now, if I had to make my best guess, I would say DDO has somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 players. I think that's a pretty good estimate. I feel pretty confident that DDO's number is somewhere in there. I mean, maybe you could go further and say, very worst case scenario, we have 20,000. Very best case scenario, we have 50. So maybe you expand that to 20 to 50. But I feel like it's probably between 30,000 and 40,000. So after looking through all this stuff this week, that actually surprises me. I thought DDO was a little less than that. I was thinking we had maybe between 10 and 15. But I think we probably, after looking at everything, we probably have more like 30 to 40. Because even though DDO's population would have dropped off quite a bit, it's not going to drop off at the same rate it has in previous years, I don't think. Because as you drop off, as population drops off, the population that's remaining is going to be more and more really hardcore serious players. I think those players are going to be less likely to leave than less serious players. So I would expect the population drop off to slow over time. So I wouldn't expect it to decrease at the same rate it has in the past, especially coming off, like in 2012, coming off a huge expansion like Motu, where a lot of people came and then dropped off. Now we have had expansions, we did have Ravenloft and such, but I still don't think the population sense is going to drop off just as quite as much, especially since if you look at the data, the population, at least according to Steam charts, didn't exactly explode when Ravenloft dropped. So I don't think we're going to see quite that kind of drop off in the past year or two since Ravenloft. What has been year and a half. So yeah, guys. So yeah, 30,000 to 40,000 is where I think the population is right now. Do I think that that's a problem? No, I don't. I think the population is fine for now. If we had any major concerns about the game going into maintenance mode or shutting down anytime soon, then we wouldn't be getting so many updates. We wouldn't be getting an expansions coming out this year. An expansion. If they had major concerns and they plan to shut the game down anytime soon, we wouldn't be getting an expansion. We would probably not even be getting regular updates every 3 months like we normally do, like every quarter. So I'm not concerned. I think that the game's still going to be around for years to come. And how many years? It really just depends on how well SSG can keep their population. If they can keep the players, and they're going to have to do that by continually putting out interesting content, good content, which they have been doing the past year or two. I think the past year or two is certainly a huge improvement. Definitely since Ravenloft it's been a huge improvement since from the few years prior to that. I would say for sure. Things like lag that used to be a big problem in the game. I think that kind of thing drove a lot of players away. That stuff has been really it's not perfect. Obviously, lag's always going to be there, but it's in a lot better state than it has been in the past. Also, another thing is San Antonio Game employees. This isn't a company like I don't know, like a big gaming company that's only just making a game for money. The San Antonio Game employees are they seem to really be huge D&D fans. So I think they work on this game. There's a lot more passion, I would say, in the staff than there is at your standard gaming company. And I would assume I would guess they want to keep the game alive for as long as it's financially feasible. So I wouldn't expect the game to shut down or anything just because it's not giving them quite the profit they had in the past or anything. They're probably going to keep it alive as long as they can make a decent salary being developers of this game and putting out updates. So I wouldn't expect them to sit down anytime soon, stop anytime soon. And, that is the vibe I get from them, that they're huge fans. I have talked to, in person, one-on-one, I've talked to, Severlin, I've talked to Cordovan in person this past summer, and I don't get the impression that they will shut the game down anytime soon. They seem like they're really passionate about the game still, and I think they are. So, yeah, I guess so in summary, guys, 30 to 40,000 players, I think, is what's left. I don't think the game's going to shut down anytime soon or at all. I think it's got plenty of years left in it. So, yeah, guys, leave your comments. Let me know what you think. I'd be interested in if you think my estimate's wrong, if you think that I've made a mistake somewhere. Let me know what you think the estimate is. If you disagree with with what I've said, I'd be interested in seeing that. I know some people have told me they think the population's more than that. So I would be interested in why people think that, or if there's somewhere they're getting data from that I haven't seen, that they're coming out with a better estimate than I am. I'd be interested in seeing that. I would love to get more data if there is anything out there. If there is anything out there that I haven't seen, you guys please tell me. I'd be interested in looking at that. So guys, yeah, that's it for the video. I'll see you all next time. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.